Hello and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. This is the Industry Corner. I'm your host, Kaitrin Snodgrass, and today I am joined by
Jay Oliva. I'm the director and producer over at Warner Brothers Animation. I've directed on the Dark Knight Returns animated feature, Flashpoint Paradox. I also work, my TV credits that I've storyboarded on is Flash TV show, that's on the CW, and I do all the DC and Marvel live action films. So I have Thor Ragnarok coming up. I just finished on Wonder Woman and Justice League, and Spider-Man Homecoming. So there you go. That's my most recent credits.
Cool.
Dude, you worked on Spider-Man?
Yeah, I worked on Spider-Man Homecoming. I actually saw an early cut of it. It's actually pretty cool.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it. It was great.
Introduce yourself, Will.
Oh, sorry. This is Will Patrick. I'm currently some kind of director on Ben 10. Forget what my official title is. And I boarded on Ben 10 before that, and before that I was at Nickelodeon working on Wally Kazam. And before that I was at Warner Brothers working on the Mad TV show. Oh yeah, and also I directed and produced 7 DC Nation shorts, Tales of Metropolis and Animal Man. And before that I worked on a bunch of Flash shows for Playhouse Disney at Oddbot and Titmouse. So here's Jojo.
Hi, I'm Jojo. Jojo Ramos. I'm currently... Stop laughing at me. I'm currently pitching a personal project, and in my past, I was a board artist on a show on Disney XD called Now Kapow. It was made at Warner Brothers. Before that, I was doing a lot of character design. I did character designs on BoJack Horseman, and before that I was on Mad at Warner Brothers, and with Will. And before that I was doing a lot of Flash animation at a lot of the local Flash houses, like, I was on the Ricky Gervais, animated, show. That was a blast. There was some preschool stuff with Renegade Animation and all sorts, all over the place.
Cool. Awesome.
We're like a Warner Brothers family here.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. We've probably met you.
Probably.
We got bagels together and didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Most likely. Although, Will, I love your Tales of Metropolis shorts. Those are awesome, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Cool. All right.
I'm fine with them too.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to jump into the interview discussion part of our podcast. So, my first question for everyone is, what sort of education and training did you receive to do your job?
I went to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. I was an animation major, and did a little bit of sequential. And before that, I did a lot of art camps, and I took some classes at the Atlanta College of Art when I was in like middle school and high school, and that actually got bought out by SCAD. So I guess SCAD is my entire education.
Hey,
Hey!
stop laughing at me!
Will, for the listeners at home, Will and Jojo are in the same room, so.
In the same room.
I'm actually there too, but I'm like in another, I'm in the bathroom.
What?
But I have a very good mic in the bathroom, so that's why I sound fantastic.
That's where the best sound is.
Yes. Soundproof.
Did you say sound pooped?
that could be it too. Soundproof.
You should have said sound pooped.
So if you hear little droppings in the background, you know what it is.
Gotta get comfortable.
All right. Well, let's see. I'd say I did. I started it all probably. I'd say CISA, California State Summer School of the Arts, which is like art summer camp for high schoolers, and it's hosted at CalArts. So I did 2 summers of that and got real into animation, and was able to go to CalArts in character animation after that. But I actually, after graduating, we didn't learn any animation programs, because we were just, that was still during the time when like Flash was like, what are you trying to do with animation? It looks really bad. We're gonna stick to hand drawn. Thank you very much. So I actually, 6 Point Harness had just like a random, like, we need more animators, come over for a day and we'll just set up a crash course for a day and kind of teach you Flash. So I did that like randomly and then got a job animating in Flash a month after that.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's cool.
Thanks.
Cool. Jay, tell us your education history.
Kaitrin knows it. That's why she's laughing. That's why I wanted to go last. For all you kids out there who want to get into animation, don't go the way that I went. Go to school like everybody else did. So I went to school to be a doctor. I was going to be a pediatrician. I actually went to the school that Kaitrin graduated from.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was a doctor and I needed a communication arts requirement, so I took animation because I was a self-taught artist. Like my parents always told me, don't go into art, there's no money in art, so be a doctor. So I was like, okay. And so I needed a communication arts requirement, and my school offered it. It wasn't, right now it's a major now at Loyola Marymount, but back then it was just, you could just take it as an elective. So I took it. I could draw. I never wanted to be an animator because I just thought animating was the most boring thing, just because I didn't want to do like cloth animation or doing walk cycles, because to me that was the most boring thing. But my professor at the time was Van Partible, who did Johnny Bravo, and I remember he spent all of like half an hour or 20 minutes talking about storyboarding. And as a kid, I was like, I'm not gonna do storyboarding because I filed it away when, he talked about X sheets, and for those of you in animation, X sheets are another boring thing. But I never thought I'd go into it. Fast forward, I go to the Job Opportunities Expo. I think it's, what's the thing that's now, Kaitrin? It's,
Convocation or whatever, like at lunch?
No. It's
CTN.
CTN, yes.
Yeah.
There you go. CTN. This was way before CTN. So remember, this is like 1995, 96. So it was a long time ago. There was no Flash back then. At least I don't think so. And anyways, I go there and I had, my portfolio, and I just happened to show it to Marvel Films at the time, and they were doing the Spider-Man TV show in the 90s. It's on Fox.
Wow.
And I had, luckily, like, I didn't even have a real portfolio. It was just a bunch of drawings on loose leaf paper. And luckily I had stuffed in my storyboards, which was on a animation bond paper, just thumbnails. It was about 30 shots. And, they looked at it and they said, you want to be a storyboard artist? And I'm like, okay. I didn't even know there was a job to be storyboards. And so, I started my job at Marvel Films doing Spider-Man. They hired me as a revisionist, and that's when I realized, I really love the storytelling part. And instead of pursuing a career in being a doctor, I think I could be pretty good at this. And so I worked my way up from there. It's been 21 years now. I started when I was 19. I'm 41 now. So, actually 22 years now. Oh my God. So yeah, and I've worked almost everywhere. I've worked on everything from, TV animation to video games to live action films and TV live action commercials, and I've done boards for all of them, and feature. I'm working on a feature right now, feature animated film. So I've kind of done it all. And in that time, like, now there's so many storyboard classes now. Like, I teach a class now that Kaitrin took.
Yeah.
But when I started, there was no class. So I had to, basically, the way I learned was I read the 5 seasons cinematography. I read a lot of film books and just taught myself as much as I could, and then from there just create kind of a class around, the way that I would teach people, like, how to do it. And yeah, so that's my claim to fame. I kind of fell into it. So for those of you who are in art school, stay in school because you guys get much more better education than what I got. I had to learn the hard way.
Well,
I don't know, because you've had a pretty illustrious career here, and the two of us have also gone to animation school.
But what's funny is that, like, I learned how to animate as I started working. Like, I wasn't a very good animation student. Like, I had really good stories, but oh my god, my walk cycle looked like Pinocchio his head was pinned to a wall and his arms were just dangling all over the place. It was terrible. But it wasn't, but again, like, as I was doing, storyboards, I learned to, like, I basically learned how to animate by doing all the key poses, and then eventually realizing that, you know what? Overseas needs more poses, and especially since I was at Sony, early on, and that's where, like, Richard Ramos really implemented animatics. He was one of the first kind of executives who wanted to have animatics because he didn't want to look at storyboards anymore. And so we were one of the first studios that implemented an animatics department, and we had to draw on one panel pages. It was one panel because we had to feed it into a scanner, and so we were drawing on just this one huge panel. And I was drawing it, and I realized, I'm basically keyframe animating, or actually full on animating in some cases. And I ended up learning how to animate because of that, and also timing, because we had to sit with the editors and go through every single drawing and be like, okay, that's 4 frames, that's 8 frames, that's 6 frames. Okay, that pan is going to be 10 frames. And I learned how to animate, do X sheets and on all of that because my executive at the time did not want to look at storyboards.
Yeah, whenever anybody talks about the paper days, it's like, yeah, I don't miss that.
No, yeah, I don't miss it at all.
I honestly can't even imagine it, because when I took your class, we just jumped in with Storyboard Pro, and I think I boarded on paper like once in college. Yeah. And since then I do Storyboard Pro. Like, my brain, when people are like, oh, I'm going to use Photoshop. Like, even Photoshop, I'm like, why? That sounds like so much work.
I know. I remember I worked for Blizzard, and they used TV Paint down there, and like, the actual program was really nice to draw with, but good God, you cannot do camera moves on that thing. And it was just, I felt like my hands were tied, and I was like drawing with my mouth, because it was like, oh, and I kept asking, can I just go back to Toon Boom, and then I'll export them and then put it and rebuild it in TV Paint. But yeah, it was pretty tough. And
I remember going from Flash to Storyboard Pro, because Mad was done entirely in Flash, so we boarded in Flash too.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I was like, that was just like all I knew, and I was like, I don't want to go to Storyboard Pro. This is gonna be lame. And I picked it up in about a week and was like, oh, never mind. Yeah. This camera is so much easier with the camera in Storyboard Pro.
Yeah, I actually learned because I was over at Disney, and we were doing everything on paper, and then one time I had done my storyboards on Sketchbook Pro. Like, I wanted to just draw in Sketchbook Pro, and because it was, it's digital, and I remember I printed it out, and I snuck like a couple pages into my storyboard, and when my producer was looking through it, he didn't notice that it was a printout. He just thought I had inked my boards. And I said, and I was like, is that cool? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, great, I'm going to do it digitally. So then from then on, I did Storyboard Pro with a combination of Photoshop. I would use Photoshop for like lettering and stuff. And it was a really laborious process, but I liked the way it looked. But then I was hired to do, storyboards on Green Lantern First Flight for Warner Brothers. It was for freelance because I was still at Disney at the time. And that's when the producer was like, oh, we're doing this on Storyboard Pro. Have you ever used this before? And it was Storyboard Pro 1. This is like the very first version. And I was like, no. And they're like, well, try it out. Everybody seems to pick it up, in about a week or so. So I picked it up and I realized, oh my God, it numbers everything on its own. And, and the drawing took a little getting used to, like, but I think I was able to figure out a way to make it work, at least the way that I liked it. And I never looked back. And in actuality now I tell like everybody that I couldn't do the storyboards as I do now if it wasn't for Storyboard Pro. Because back in the old days, like, you had to eyeball it and see whether or not, like, the action was registering in the right, where your characters were, and even when the timing director would time it, they usually got it wrong. And so Storyboard Pro, like, I would basically I'd check it, I just look at it as a quick time, or I would, I'd scrub through and see if I needed any in-betweens, or if like, my volumes got too small or too big. And because of that, I was able to, like, do storyboards and do camera moves that I would never do back in the old days. I could not do a lot of, like, most of the stuff that I do now. That's the plug for Toon Boom. Hopefully, Toon Boom, if you're hearing this, like, I'm more than happy to be sponsored by you.
Cool, that's awesome.
They're not already paying you right now?
Yeah, they should.
They should pay all of us, but give me free Toon Boom. No, okay, cool. So, my next, questione for you guys is, what is your, process? So from script to screen, how do you go about boarding pages from your script or your outline? Like, do you have a personal process you like to go through?
Okay, I'll go first. It'll be a very short explanation because I only have... Okay, my process for design.
Yeah, you can do design too if you want to talk about your design process.
Yeah, I've done more design. My process for design, I've only really done designs in Flash. And let's see, like, you have this, you're given a storyboard, and often enough, there's an animatic you can watch to see, like, do I need a profile view? Do I need a rear 3/4 or special pose? And sometimes it's like a character that just needs a new outfit, or sometimes it's just like this character needs to be completely built from scratch, and you need to go through the entire thing and just take note of every single little asset that you need to draw up. But yeah, it's just kind of like, knowing the board artist and knowing the show and kind of taking all of that into consideration and designing from scratch. Oh, like on Mad, I would do that. I'd have like a lot of control on what things looked like. I don't know, you just like, I need a pose where a guy is sitting down. I need a pose where he's like standing up, and depending on like how much animation, because those Mad shorts are so fast. Sometimes you can just get away with like one or two special poses, and you don't need to do like a really puppeted thing. And sometimes that's almost better. It looks more hand drawn than like a puppet. But yeah, I'll go in and I'll actually rig as I'm drawing the character. Like, I'll do a sketch. Like, obviously you'll do a sketch, but on the next layer, I'll just start rigging as I'm cleaning up the drawing, and that way it kind of gets done a little bit faster. And mouth packs, eye blinks, and color, and you're done.
Do you want to explain what mouth packs are? Because I don't know if every listener would know.
Okay, mouth packs are just like mouth shapes. So when the animator gets your rigged character, they can make it talk. So there's a closed, like a flat lip that makes an M, and open makes an A, and you go to the ooh, and you can, I take the, I appreciate the Muppets. I think you can get away with less. I usually put
That's a good approach.
10 or 12 mouths, I think, is pretty good. You can get a lot. Yeah, Muppets are only open close. But I have been on a show where I've had to do over 100 mouth shapes per like profile. Yeah, that was BoJack.
Oh my god,
that was a lot.
I'm not surprised. Wow.
There's a lot. It's a talky show, so we got to make those mouths look good.
My turn.
You can go, Will, since you're in the same room.
I mean, you could go, though. You're in the bathroom.
I went to the bathroom, but I mean...
All right. So first, you take the stylus and put it on the screen.
Really? I stare at the wall for hours.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. You gotta do that.
That goes without saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
You gotta watch a documentary,
Get in the mood. Put on some jazz.
Forget about work for a little.
Drink some wine.
Yeah. Drink some wine. Kick your feet up.
Yeah. Go for a walk.
Yeah. Actually, this is getting off subject a little bit, but there's is it Ward Kimball, I think? They found his diary from his feature Disney days, and it's just he's describing his day. He's I go in, have a few drinks, animate a little bit. Then we go over to where the nurses are, and we hit on the nurses, and then I play trombone. We got the band together, and I was do you guys do any work at all?
They had much more cushier schedules than we've got now.
Yeah. Well,
at least it sounds like it.
Yeah. They were the only ones that could do it.
That is true.
All right. So anyway, my process. Well, for boarding, yeah, obviously staring at the wall for a couple hours is a real thing. Doing thumbnails, I generally thumbnail in the margins and really tiny in Storyboard Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will take those thumbnails and blow them up into my stage and then sort of copy paste my little thumbnails into each panel, and then I sort of work kind of beef them up.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's all kind of technical.
Actually, well, I do have a more specific question for you because Ben 10 is outline driven. So, back when you were boarding with Mickey, what was your guys' process? I guess once you would get an outline to make the episodes, you guys had a lot more free range.
Wait, hold on. You guys do outline now?
Oh yeah, we're outline driven.
I did Ben 10 on season 1 and season 4. I don't know. You guys are Ben 10 20 by now or something like that.
Yeah, he's 80 years old. He's in the nursing home.
Well, time is cyclical with Ben, so he's back to 10.
Yeah. Ben should be. He should have grandkids. So
yeah,
that's cool that you guys do outlines, because back then it was here's a script, do it. You've got no time, and we're not going to pay you any money.
Yeah,
that's pretty much what I remember when I was working on Ben 10. And they're always yelling at you. They're already yelling at you, and you just started.
Was that Glenn?
Well, the yelling hasn't stopped.
Okay, that's good to know.
Oh.
Wait, is Dan Reba still there?
No, he's over at DreamWorks now.
Is that DreamWorks now? Okay.
Yeah, it's John Fang's in charge, and
Oh, John. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember John?
Yeah, I worked with John a long time ago. But yeah, I remember him. But yeah, like I said, I worked on Ben 10 long time ago.
I bet you anything John dresses exactly the same way he does now that he did back then. That's just a guess, but
I'm sure he does. I mean, I know a lot of artists who they have their own uniform. They wear the same kind of clothes for the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, man, it's cargo pants, Nikes, and a Lakers hoodie.
Yeah.
And
that's definitely yeah.
There's a character in one of the old shows that has a Lakers jersey on, and I still think I feel like John had something to do with this.
Probably, most likely.
That man loves his basketball.
Yes, he does.
So, what's your process?
Sorry, we keep getting sidetracked.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's more entertaining.
Okay, so with board-driven shows, they give us an outline, which is theoretically shorter than what the episode is supposed to be, but on Ben 10, it can be longer sometimes. But they'll give us an episode outline, and it's generally the Tennysons show up to food festival, and there's some weird monsters running around, and Ben learns a lesson, turns into an alien, punches him out, the Tennysons go home. So it's our job to kind of fill in the gaps there. We write dialogue.
Wow.
Yeah, we do jokes. Hopefully they're funny. So the way that generally worked was, we kind of batted around for a couple of days and just to sort of like get an idea of where we wanted to go with it. And obviously, usually there's two people boarding on an episode, so we would kind of have like talk about our own take on what we wanted to do. Mickey definitely had her own specific ideas on how she wanted episodes to go. And honestly, with us, like a lot of times we would jive and, kind of build off of each other's ideas. So we had a pretty good working relationship. It's not everyone is that lucky. So we kind of batted around, like I said, get some jokes. Usually I would go like just to kind of like snowball effect and just go really crazy with the episode. And then Colin on Friday would be like, is the director. He was like, yeah, you can't do that, Will. That's way too far away from what we're supposed to do. So we pull it back and kind of meet in the middle. And then we kind of split the episode up based on who wanted to do what part, rough it out, and then we pitch it again, and they say wrong, do it again. So we'll rough it out and then clean up and pitch it to Man of Action, and they kind of give their feedback, and then we clean it up and pitch it like the following Tuesday. And yeah, that's kind of how it goes. It's a little 5-week cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, you guys did that in 5 weeks?
Yep.
5 weeks?
Holy crap.
It's 11 minutes though, Jay.
It's what?
11 minutes this time around.
Yeah, it's shorter than what you guys used to do. But
that's still
easy.
though. That's still pretty crazy in 5. Because what we used to do is, one of the things that we used to kick around when I was on back in the old days with He-Man, it wasn't a board driven show, but one of the things we were trying to do in order to get the boards more time was we were going to try to do an outline like you guys had, but what we would do is it would give us more times for the boards because the writer wouldn't need the 6 weeks that the writer to write. So we would take those 6 weeks, add it to our 4 weeks, and we'd have 10 weeks to do an episode, for example, from being, again, if we were writing it while, if we just had the premise, that way it gave us time to, fully kind of elaborate and give us, elaborate the episode and kind of do everything. And that was something that like my producer Gary Hartle was kind of kicking around. He's like, well, the writer doesn't need the 6 weeks time because we're the writers. So if we take that time from the writers and from their schedule, then, it should make sense that it would give, the board artists a little bit more time to storyboard and kind of work it out. So that's why, again, like 5 weeks, wow, that's just one more week than what we normally, on the other shows that I've worked on where it's already written. Wow. But it sounds, because I think I did My Friends Tigger and Pooh, and those were 11-minute episodes too, but we had songs in ours, and I would get, I don't know if you guys have ever had this thing where you'd be working on the script and it would just say, song here, and then it would just go on with the episode. And I'm like, what kind of song is this? And they're like, well, it's a fast song. I'm like, well, can you hum it? They're like, well, the composer hasn't done it yet. And I'm like, well, what kind of song is it? And I wouldn't get the song until a week before the board was due. And the song would be 3 minutes long. And I'd be like, holy crap, how do I? So yeah, that's wild.
Nice save there, Jay.
Yeah. That's wild that you guys did that in 5 weeks. Wow. That's very impressive.
Jay, what is your process from script to screen?
Well, Will, are you done with your process? I'm sure you're still going, right? Are you done?
Well, we were talking about like schedules and stuff.
Yeah.
So, like Ben 10 is easily the cushiest job I've ever had with deadlines. Like Mad was insane. We would put out an entire episode, like from the beginning of writing to air was a month. Like
Wow.
we had 2 weeks to board, and that was board, animatic, sound. Like that's what the board artists were responsible for. Yeah, that's right. It was Americans animating it. We were very proud of that. Wait, did I lose everybody? What happened?
You didn't.
No, we were just waiting if there was any more to your process.
Oh, I don't know. Nah, I'm done. But yeah, Ben 10's like, they're like, you get 5 weeks to do an episode. And I'm like, 5 weeks? Wow!
You know, back in the old days, I used to be like, they think they used to get like 6 weeks to do boards back then. I remember it was a lot more cushier back then. And then every week they started shaving off because they're like, well, you know, the computer's doing a lot of it or whatever, right?
You know, and button that just draws for you. It's great.
The storyboard button.
I remember they kept cutting it down by a week every single time. Where I heard of a production. It was it was at Warner Brothers. It was like, I keep wanting to say Coconut Fred or something like that. It's one of those shows where it had a 2-week schedule. A 2-week schedule. It was 1 week to rough and 1 week to clean. And I remember they asked me, they're like, hey Jay, they need some help. Can you help them out as, like freelance? And I'm like, okay, are they gonna pay me like triple my rate? And they're like, no. Then I'm like, then why am I gonna be working like, twice or 3 times as fast to hit these insane deadlines if you're not gonna pay me to compensate, the basically the all-nighters I'm gonna have to do in order to do, they just didn't get that just because the characters may be simple or whatever, it's simple shapes, didn't mean that there was still pencil mileage or there was still that thinking, where you gotta still, figure out where the camera and the camera and the performance, and they just thought, well, a week should do that, right? And I remember just shook my head. I'm like, I'm not gonna run for the same amount, and they weren't even paying. They're still paying like something like $400 a page, and that's like really low, and like I said, and they wanted a 2-week turnaround, and I remember I was like, oh, this is not going to end up good, and sure enough, that season it was just a mess, and they had to go back up to like the 4-week schedule, which is kind of the standard that is now. Yeah, well, what's that famous Joe Warner quote? What is it? It's, I don't want it right, I want it Tuesday. Yeah. Yep, that about sums them up. I'm just kidding. I love Warner Brothers. Yeah, we love Warner Brothers. They're great. They really are. Like, I had a lot of fun when I was there. Yeah, I mean, it's actually it's something that is it's at every studio, no matter where you go to, whether you work in video games or live action films or animation studios. It's always the whole, do you want it fast, do you want it cheap, or do you want it good? You can't have all three, so you have to kind of find that balance between the three of them. And it's always a fight for that. And, as artists, we have, I remember I did a board and I did it really fast. And they're like, why do we have to pay you, so much? I remember I did a commercial and the guy was trying to get my rate to go down. And I was like, no, this is my rate. And they're like, well, it only took you a week to do that. I'm like, yeah, but I spent the last 20 years training my life, working this hard so I can do it in a week, or I can do it in the crazy deadline that you guys wanted. You know? I think a lot of people, like, especially for kids that are like coming out of school and like, they get caught up in working for free because oh God, yeah, I was one of those. Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, you gotta like have enough self-esteem to be like, yeah, I just spent 4 years honing this craft, and like you owe me money because you didn't do that. Exactly.
Help me pay my student loans.
Yeah, the student loans. Oh my God. It's funny. Like the school that Kaitrin and I went to school, I only did 2 years there, and it took me 7 years to pay it off, my student loans.
Oh my God, Jay.
And I only did two years. It's crazy. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great.
No. But for those of you, stay in school, get a good education.
Stay in school, kids.
Don't listen to us.
Don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs.
Or more than the normal amount. Anyway.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we are in animation. Just kidding.
Yeah, and in Southern California.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's another thing. If you want to work in animation, you need to move out to California because this is where all the jobs are. Very rarely will a studio hire you and send you freelance if you live on the East Coast. There are some East Coast studios, but they're not under the union. And so the pay may not be so good and the schedules may not be so good, even though you hear us about the schedules here. But I've heard some horror stories about some of the East Coast studios. I mean, some are actually okay, but it's good that if you work for a union studio, I mean, when you're a kid, you don't really think about this, but it's great that you have full medical, full dental. You have, you have a pension. And here's what's good, kind of, at least in the case of for me, because I also work in live action films, I'm also in the art directors guild, the ADG, which is also, art directors and storyboard artists for live action. Pretty much all films it has to be a union member. And in order for me to get in, it was like this really crazy, I had to jump through hoops to get in. It was like the hardest thing for me to get.
Mm-hmm. Really? It was like a hazing process?
It's cool. It was being in the art directors guild, which is the live action version of, storyboards. The hours that I do for the live action films, whether it's for Marvel or DC, as long as it's a union show, it applies to the same hours that I would do if I worked at, like Nickelodeon or Disney. And that way, if I do either or, whether I work in animation or live action, it all contributes and also adds to my pension as well, which cool. is nice. So that's why I always tell people, if you really need to, pay the bills, then go ahead and do a union gig. But if you can and you have a choice, the union gig is the best because then you're contributing to things that you don't think about when you're a kid, like coming out of school. When you're coming out of school, you just want to, get a job, and you don't think about 401k or pensions or health benefits and stuff. But it's something that you should definitely look into. And in animation, it's a great, it's one of the few art jobs that actually has that kind of security. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of guys who are doing comic books and illustrators and stuff like that. And it's tough. If they get sick, they don't want to get sick because if they're sick, then it's all out of their pocket. So it's always good to kind of think that even though we're artists and we're happy that we're getting paid to draw, you also got to think to yourself, this is a career. And you need to take care of yourself, even though we have these crazy hours, and always think about the future because, as an artist, we can work for a very long time, but at the same time, we have to be able to adapt to what the studios need, animatics and doing storyboards now is so much different than when I first started. And you have to be able to adapt to that and make choices in your career, even when you're first starting out, with that in mind. Where are you going to be in 10 years? Do you want to be a director? Or do you want to, be a designer? What are the things that you want to do? And that's the kind of what you have to kind of, think about. So anyways, that's my spiel about working in union.
It's a good spiel.
Yeah. I mean, it's better. I mean, coming from Flash, it was always the union gigs were always, that's what you were shooting for, and it was kind of hard to get in bigger studios when you were a Flash artist.
Mm-hmm. Jay, did you want to answer the question about process from script to screen?
I guess my process is I stare at the wall. The way I do it is, I'll read the script. I usually talk to the producer or directors about whatever section that I'm doing, kind of get a feel for what they want. Sometimes they're very specific. They'll tell me I want it to feel like this or this particular movie. And then I'll go home, I'll watch it, I'll reference it. Sometimes they'll just say, I have no idea, just come up with something. And that's when, you have to just think to yourself, okay, what about the sequence that you personally feel excited about? Because I've worked on some shows that are just boring as hell, but I have to find, as a board artist, you have to find something in it that inspires you. Because if you don't feel inspired to do that sequence, the audience is going to feel it. They're going to feel this is boring, And what you have to do is you have to find something, whether it's the acting or the performance, with the action or just something. Sometimes I'll be working on a show that the script is god awful boring, but the director's like, let's direct it like a horror movie, or let's direct it like, like like Scorsese or something. And so I'll be like, okay, that's a challenge. That's something that I can make it fun for myself. But so that's what you gotta do, is you gotta just find something about the section that you're doing that calls to you and kind of and makes you want to try something different or harder, and kind of push your kind of storytelling, kind of what you want to do. Of course, if you're on a show that you just have to do it that way, then there's not much you can do. But you still, again, you put into the performance. When I was on Winnie the Pooh, I couldn't do big explosions and stuff, even though I wanted to. But what I did is I focused on the acting and the performance, and because we had musicals in there, I tried to come up with, because I love musicals, so I tried to, do homages to my favorite Hollywood musicals, as well as do some new stuff that's a little bit more contemporary. So after I do that, then, like, what people don't understand is that with storyboarding, the way I think about it, 85% of the work is thinking, and only the 15% part is the drawing part, because for me, I'm always constantly trying to think of, like, okay, like what I'll normally do is I'll, just like Will said, I'll do thumbnails. Sometimes I'll just do a grocery list, because I'll just go through and say this shot, this shot, this shot to this dialogue, and then what I'll do is I used to do a lot of thumbnails just on paper, but then I realized, because I'm so lazy, I realized that, hey, I'm kind of wasting, drawing on paper. Why don't I just do the thumbnails right on Storyboard Pro? Because again, I'm very lazy. So
yeah, I used to thumbnail on my script, and then it was like, why not just do it in the program? What am I doing?
So that's what I do now. What I do now is on Storyboard Pro, I pick the fattest brush, like a 300 brush, right? And I just block out the shots, and it's the most ugliest thing, and I hate every shot. But the thing is that, at least I get through the whole thing very quickly. I can usually do, quite a few pages in just a day or two. It's just blocking it out. Then I'll go back and then I'll look at it, and I usually hate everything, but I'll look at it now and be like, okay, this isn't the shot that I want, but I think I know what I want, because it's easier to start from something that you don't like than to just stare at a blank page. And for those of you who are new storyboarders who want to do this stuff, never start at the beginning. Don't start at fade in, exterior, haunted house or whatever, and draw that first. What you normally want to do is you want to jump around. Go to the easiest part first. So normally, for me, I get the Act 3 action, for example. So I'll do the ending. I'll do the wrap up where, like, Ben 10 is just finished defeating whatever monster of the week is, and he's at home eating cereal, dealing with, his dad or his mom or whoever. And I'll do that first because it's easy. It's just talking, and I just block that out. And it allows me to kind of think about what I'm going to do with the action sequence, because I need the most time from the action sequence. So while I'm drawing that talking out, I'm working it out in my head. And by the time I get to the action stuff, I have a pretty good idea of how I want it to go, the camera work, the kind of choreography. So once I kind of get to that, I can kind of, hit the ground running. Because the worst thing you want to do is like, again, stare at a blank piece of paper or stare at the blank, and you're just drawing and you're consciously doing Control Z because you're like, I hate every single line that I'm doing. So that's kind of my process. I do it like that. And luckily for me, I'm very fast, but I'm only fast just because I've done this a very long time. But that's one of the things you want to do is when you first start off is work on your speed. You can always learn to be a better storyteller by just looking at other people's storyboards and kind of doing your own research. But your speed and your process, everybody's a little bit different, and you just want to find something that works for you.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good advice about you just want to get stuff down to get the ball rolling, because sometimes you're just blocked up and you just want to put something down, because then at least you've got to start. And totally do easy stuff first. I know the way I like to break down what I board is start with easy stuff, have the most intense stuff in the middle, so I'm not like hustling to get the sweet fight scenes down at the very end when I'm up against the deadline. So you save the easy stuff towards the end that you can sort of skimp on.
Cool.
And then what I do is after I've kind of roughed it all out, and then usually by that point you already review it with your director or producer. And when you get to cleanup is the greatest part of the storyboarding process because you turn off your brain. And the way I do it is that I just, because it's on Storyboard Pro, I jump around and I do all of my close-ups. I just jump around and I do all of my close-ups. And then the next time I do all my 2 shots. And finally, the last thing I jump onto is like the group shots, which I usually hate doing. Those are the last things I do. But usually that's the way I do it. So that way, like, every day I can do, like, the most that I've been able to clean up is like 125 panels a day. But then eventually as you get to the more harder stuff, you can only do like 20 or 10 sometimes if it's a very complicated sequence that has like 7 characters or 10 characters or a cast of thousands where the main character's fighting an army. But what you want to do is you want to be smart about it because again, as long as you hit your deadline, it doesn't matter the order. So like I said, I love close-ups. Those are like, when I do close-ups, I feel like I'm on the beach in the Bahamas and it's a nice vacation.
You're like the kind of guy that eats all the Lucky Charm marshmallows first.
Yes. How did you know, Will? How did you know?
I just got a feeling.
Well, I went in your kitchen while you guys were talking. I was eating all of your Lucky Charm marshmallows,
My Lucky Charms!
They're mine now!
No!
Cool.
Something else you said about, like, talking to the producer or the director, that's absolutely a thing that not everybody thinks to do, but is totally valuable. I remember on Mad, I would get a script and I would just be like, this is stupid and not funny, and I just didn't get it. And I would go into the writer's room and be like, okay, guys, what the hell is this? And they would pitch it to me, and then it was funny. And then I would have a better grasp on why it was funny and like what aspect of it they wanted to embrace. Because sometimes it's all in just the timing of a joke or the way a line is phrased or something. And so that will give you like such a more valuable perspective on what you're doing and save everybody a lot of time. Because if you go into something and you don't really get the joke and you just sort of board it as you see it and you don't think it's funny, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to think it's funny either, and you'll have to go back and fix everything.
Yep, that's very true.
So I kind of have a funny question next, or a fun question. What's the worst advice you've ever gotten? Like any funny bad advice that you've ever gotten?
Jay, did you?
I'm thinking. I'm scrambling in my head. I think I might have erased it from my brain. Let me think. Oh, well, it wasn't bad advice. I was working on a show where, because we were using, like, not very good animation studio, the producer had sent out a kind of a memo saying, these are the things that I don't want. And one of the things was no running and talking at the same time, because they couldn't do the animation of the guys running and having the mouth, like, kind of. So every time the characters were chasing like the bad guy, they'd have to stop, deliver the line, and then continue running. So we had that. And then on the same show, we couldn't do camera moves, so there were no pans or no truck-ins. It was all like, it was all just lockdown cameras.
I am so curious what the show is.
I can't say, or else they'll probably find me and track me down, and there'll be a knock at my door.
Maybe you can tell me after the podcast. I'm so curious.
Yeah, it was a list of like some of the words, like it was kind of ridiculous of things that you could and could not do.
Now, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to think of the question because all I'm thinking is like, what show could that possibly be?
Any bad advice, Will? You've ever gotten any bad advice?
I'm sure I've gotten lots and didn't realize it. Go into animation.
Yeah, I can see that.
I can't think of anything. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that, like what you're saying, Jay, where like shows are like have like ridiculous parameters or something. But
yeah,
man, like, yeah, people have like weird sensibilities. I mean, any preschool show, like they always have the most bizarre rules. Like, I don't even know where they come from.
Probably the child psychologists.
Yeah, totally. Like, no angry faces. This character looks too surprised. Like, what's that gonna do?
Jojo, any about you?
I can't think of any. I've been, like, trying to think of it before we started the Skype call.
Good setup.
It's funny because the reason I asked it is because I have, like, so many. So I always think of more people.
What's your bed advice?
Yeah, what's your bed advice?
Well,
Yeah, what's yours?
I got told to stop drawing like a girl.
What? That's weird.
I don't even know how you...
I don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's like the one that always sticks out on my head, and then I always like go back to like
grow a penis already.
I basically be a man. That's like the advice I was given, and I was just like, and it was funny too because I kept like prodding the person, and I was like, so do I draw too round? Is that what you mean? Like, do I have a round sensibility? And they were like, no, I could just tell. Like, if I was looking at you, if you were applying for a job, that this person is a girl, and I was like.
Here's the thing.
That shouldn't matter.
I've seen how you draw. I don't know what he's talking about. Like, it's not like you're drawing hearts on everything. Like,
I delete that.
I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
Although I do have a funny, it's not for you, Kaitrin, but one of my former students, Lauren, who's actually executive producer on Voltron, and she's an amazing, artist and stuff. But when I first hired her from school, I told her, hey, you're a great draftsman, but when you draw your men, they have women hips. So, and you could tell, like, all of her women were beautiful, but her guys, they all had, like, these women hips, like, they were, like, the way that, and I'm like, okay.
Is that why all the guys on Voltron look like that?
Maybe, I don't know. But I remember, like, Lauren and I used to laugh about it because remember, I hired her on He-Man, and this on a very manly show, and he's wearing his, like, fuzzy shorts, and he's got these women hips, like the way that she drew his legs, and I would just start laughing. I'm like, you just gave He-Man women hips again, or Skeletor with women hips. So that's the only time that I've ever seen an artist where I could tell that, their sensibilities as a woman was kind of translating into when they were drawing men. And that's the same thing, like, when I see it as when I first started drawing women, they were the most ugliest women ever. Because I could draw dudes, and then I realized that I need to start learning how to draw women, or else all of my stories feel like sausage parties, right? And I remember I drew my first woman, and I was like 13 or 12 years old, and it was the most god-awful, ugly woman ever. But I just kept practicing, and I remember one day I finally got it right, and I went to sleep, and I woke up in the middle of the night to just check to make sure it actually did kind of look like a girl. And then I remember all was good in the world when I saw that, and I went back to sleep and with a smile on my face because I realized that I had actually finally achieved that, because it's very hard, at least for me when I was first starting out as an artist, to draw the opposite sex, because I was always looking at myself in the mirror.
Yeah, I get the same. I get that a lot.
Well, you're in good company, because if you look at all those old Renaissance paintings, like, all the women look like men with, like, balls glued on their chests.
And all the babies look like small people.
Men.
Small people, yeah.
Small men.
Naked men.
Yeah.
Jesus was an ugly baby.
Yeah.
Cool. So, for the next section, I actually went on the social medias and tried to see if I could get some questions from listeners. And I actually got one for you, Jay, specifically.
Great.
And it said, how much did Jay have to study on different comic styles for the Superman anniversary short? And what were the bigger challenges presented in making it? And that's from Matt Shelley.
Oh, that's a good one. So I did the 75th anniversary short for Superman a couple years ago, about 4 years ago. I think they're at 79th anniversary.
I think I worked on that.
The 75th one?
I think I, like, animated a cape at the very end or something.
Remember? Oh, maybe you did.
They, like, threw that at me, and they're like, animate this cape.
Was it the cape of him on top of the 75, and then the cape is animating in the wind or something?
Yeah,
Oh wow! There you go.
Small world.
That is a very small world. Let's see. So what was the question, Kaitrin?
It was how much did you have to study the different styles for the short and like bigger challenges presented?
I didn't really have to study the styles too much because our character designer Dusty he was able to emulate. Yeah, Dusty. He was able to emulate like the Kurt Swan style and do a kind of the George Reeves and Christopher Reeves kind of like translating that. So I didn't really have to like study the style. But what I did do though is I had to kind of like go back into history and figure out what were kind of iconic moments for it, and it was myself, Peter Girardi, and Bruce Timm, and also Zack Snyder in some cases. We all kind of sat around and talked about all of our favorite kind of moments in Superman history. And then what we did is then, because we were Warner Bros., we went in the archives and found a lot of the covers, the old covers, and they gave me kind of bullet points. Okay, we want to see, can we fit Turtle Boy in here for like the Kurt Swan era, or can we fit in this? And there are certain things I already knew what I wanted. I knew what I was going to do for the Christopher Reeve one and also the George Reeves because, as a kid, I grew up with those, so I knew what I wanted for that. And then the Fleischer opening was something that I always wanted because that was my pitch, because originally I think they wanted to do something kind of different. I'm trying to remember, they wanted one scene to kind of morph into another scene, and I was like, no, why don't we start with Action Comics #1 and it comes alive, and then he jumps out of the comic book into the Fleischer world, and go from there, and then do that as to the different eras. And then so what happens is even my storytelling, like the shots early on, I tried to emulate Fleischer and then try to emulate what was going on in the 60s and 70s with Superman. And then when I got to the more modern era, I tried to change like kind of the filmmaking of how, it was, because I did the death of Superman with Doomsday, and then I had to show, I think we had Smallville, and then finally we ended with the Henry Cavill Superman, which coincidentally enough, I had done that scene for Man of Steel of him getting. So I was like, I know how to do all this stuff, so it all kind of worked out that I only had to just know from a story standpoint what I wanted to do, but then from a drawing standpoint, like Dusty handled all that, the heavy lifting for that stuff.
Cool. I have another.
By the way, Dusty is an awesome guy that looks like Thor.
Yes.
Like drives around.
I've never met him, but I know of him.
Yeah, he's a legend. I think in one of the crew pictures they made him wear a Thor helmet.
Yeah. He lost a bet, and when we did the crew picture, he had to wear the Thor helmet.
Yeah, it was pretty perfect.
So I have another, it's actually from the same, listener, Matt, but I, like this question a lot. Was, there ever a project that you worked on that you can talk about that got scrapped or didn't see the light of day, but you wish it had?
What was that last part?
But you wish it had, like something you worked on that either didn't get finished, or like something you were working on and, that you can talk about, because I know people have stuff that they can't talk about, but, like a project you were working on and then it never saw the light of day and you wish that it could have because you liked it so much.
I could talk about Goofoo.
I think you told me about this.
It was a topical, animated news.
Oh my god.
With sketches about what was happening, what current events were happening.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare already.
This was back when the 2008 president primaries were happening, but by the time we finished the season, it was just unairable, because we'd have John McCain and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton all saying things, and by the time we were done with the episode, it was so old hat. It was just we would have to be South Park in order to even attempt something like that, and it just didn't work out. But the crew was awesome, and I learned how to play hacky sack, so it wasn't a total loss.
Jay, you got any? You got any good ones?
I got a lot of them that I can't talk about, but
I asked the golden secret question, apparently.
Yeah, I know. Let me think. Was there any? I mean, there's a lot of films that I was on that ended up like being put on the back burner, so they're still gonna come out. So I can't talk about those. Let me think. Was there? Oh, when I was at Marvel, when we were Marvel Lionsgate, we were doing all those animated features. But they were direct to video. But I always they were gonna do a Civil War one, and I thought that was gonna be pretty cool. But the thing is that was back when Marvel didn't own any of the characters, so it was gonna be Civil War without anybody, except there was a clause that we could have Wolverine in it, but only if he was there for under 10 minutes of screen time or something. I can't remember. So we were trying to scramble to make a movie like Civil War. What was funny though is that what I had pitched was kind of not really. It's similar to what they ended up doing in the live action ones, where of course you're pitting Tony Stark versus Captain America. But I was trying to find a way to use whatever roster we had, which was basically just the Avengers. We couldn't really bring anybody else in, but there were some things that were similar, a lot of things that were of course different. But that was one of the things that we were trying to do like back in like 2000 and maybe like 6 or something. And I remember that, and I remember at the time they were trying to do a Rocket Raccoon movie, and I remember, this is before Guardians of the Galaxy was huge, and I remember thinking like, you guys want to, like, out of all the Marvel properties, you want to put your money into Rocket Raccoon and make a feature out of that. And in my head, I was like, come on. And the next thing I see Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just waiting for the Rocket Raccoon like solo film to come out, So there was that, and I think we were gonna do. Let's see, we did ended up doing a Thor. I'm trying to remember that we had we did do a Wolverine versus Hulk one. I've worked on so many of these things. I'm trying to remember what we did not end up doing. For DC, there was a ton of stuff that we wanted to do. I mean, I still wanted to do Kingdom Come, we still couldn't figure out a way to do Kingdom Come correctly.
And Alex Ross.
Yeah, that's a tough one to do, but I know that's something that we're kicking around. We always want to do like a Blackest Night one with the Green Lanterns. I wanted to always do a Gotham by Gaslight was one of the ones that I really wanted to do, and do the Magnolia designs. I think that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
anything with Magnolia.
It would have just been awesome. So I mean, there's a lot of things that like for example, we were supposed to do a Swamp Thing direct to video like 6 years ago, and I think the rights they couldn't figure out who owned the rights, and then next thing that we find out that Michael Uslan, who owns the rights for Batman, actually owned the rights for Swamp Thing. And when I talked to him, he's like, yeah, I told him it was fine to make a DTV out of it, but that ended up getting scrapped. And so when I ended up doing my last animated direct to video for them, which was Justice League Dark, like about a year ago, the first thing I asked was, is Swamp Thing in it? And they're like, yes. I was like, sweet. So I could finally do Swamp Thing. Finally, I could, cross that off of my bucket list.
I actually have a story about a Swamp Thing
really?
That I wanted to do that never saw the light of day, exactly because of the licensing, like the weird licensing stuff.
Oh, really? That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. So go ahead.
One of the, like when we were still pitching like DC Nation shorts, I wanted to do Swamp Thing like environmental like PSAs where it's like a kid awesome. Like it's like a kid like lights a match and like throws it on some like I don't know like dried leaves or something, and they're like laughing, and then Swamp Thing like grows out from like beneath them and like grabs his shoulders and goes like, remember the trees, and like maggots are like like on his face, and the kid's like horrified, and then that's it.
Oh, that would have been so awesome.
I know, I was so excited for that I was like running around to people and like grabbing their shoulders and being like, trees, and everyone hated me.
Oh, that would have been such a good one. Maybe they'll eventually do something like that. Oh, that'd be so cool.
Well, all right, guys. Well, I have a last question, and it's from at Martin Creator on Twitter. And the question is, does the art have to be good in the storyboard?
Good is very subjective.
Yeah, I think it has to be clear.
Yeah.
That's the key word. It has to have good silhouette, and you have to know what's going on, and you have to know who is who.
Yeah.
And what they're feeling and what they're thinking.
Yeah. I also want to be clear that when I called out this question, I wasn't like laughing at the question. I thought this was a great question because I've seen some storyboard drawings like in professional finished boards that I'm like, I know exactly what's happening. This is ugly. So, you know, I thought it was
She's talking about my boards.
Now, you're the last one I'm talking about because your boards, Will is like a human printer and it's gross. And also he animates his boards and it's terrible. I mean, it's terrible because it's so good and everyone else can't like compare to you and everyone is terrible compared to you, Will.
Aw, thanks, Kaitrin.
Your boards make me mad.
I guess that's my goal.
No, they're really good.
But yeah, but going off what Jojo was saying, like clarity is totally like all important. And I mean, good anatomy. Like you should have good anatomy. You can't just like.
They need to have a spine that works like a human spine.
Yeah.
Bent in weird places. And you're not going to be able to read that because your brain is used to reading normal humans doing normal human movements.
Yeah, but as far as like cleanliness goes, like you can get away with some pretty rough drawings.
Yeah. Jay?
I don't know. It's a loaded question because it all depends on the show you're on and of how much time you have. Because if you have no time, of course, your board's gonna look kind of ugly.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, like, you know, for example, you know, the Legend of Korra boards, like if you look at those, they're like beautiful. Like, but that's what they set the bar so high on that show that you have to have to draw in that style or in that kind of way. So it really depends. I mean, it's like what Will and Jojo says. Like, yeah, it's about clarity. But the thing is that, you know, as a storyboard artist, you know, number one, what they're going to look at is your drawings. Like, it's very superficial. And I tell people, like, you know, you don't have to be the best artist, but it has to be clear. But if you want to get the job or when they look at your portfolio, the first thing they're going to notice is how you draw. And if your drawing looks like, even though your shots are like freaking like, you know, Scorsese, Coppola, or Spielberg, they're gonna look at your drawings first. Yeah. They're not gonna see the sequence of shots and what you're building up to, you know, your climax, the choreography. They're just gonna see the ugliness in your drawings. And so, you know, if you want to get the job or get your foot in the door, you have to be technically proficient. You know, you can't, and you have to be able, I tell people, you have to be, you know, jack of all trades, master of nothing. You know, you have to be able to emulate and ape other artists' styles because you're never going to be working on a show that is in your own style. Yeah. You know, so you have to be able to do, you know, either comic book stuff or the more cartoony stuff or anything, you know, if you want to get those jobs, you know, and by doing so, you just have to be a good draftsman. Yeah. And I think this is a question that I get this a lot when I'm teaching classes or I'm seeing people's portfolios. They always ask me like, you know, what's the least amount of work do I have to show in my portfolio? And I tell them, like, if that's your attitude, then don't go into animation, you know, because animation, that's not the way you want to go.
Yeah, like, I've said a lot, like, I didn't get into animation not to draw. Yeah. Because that's all it is.
Actually, this is, cause you were just talking about Korra. Did you ever freelance on Korra, Jay?
Yeah, I did Korra. I did a couple seasons of Korra.
Were you on staff?
No. I did it on freelance.
How long did they get? Cause like those boards are like supreme amazing.
They don't give you very much time. It was like 4 weeks or something.
Man, I have no idea. Like that, I like that show and like also Voltron. I haven't seen the boards for Voltron yet though, but like the boards on Korra are just like my favorite to look at for reference. And I'm just
and you were all impressed with me for 5 weeks on Ben? Like, 4 weeks?
But your way of drawing is very, like, different than, like, Korra. You know what I'm saying? And, like, I like the way you draw, and I also, like, because every drawing you draw, you actually make it look like an illustration. because you like ink that.
Wait, who are you talking to?
I'm
Me
talking
or
to
Jay?
you, Will.
Oh,
You
me?
will. She doesn't talk about me because she remembers all the crappy drawings I did on the whiteboard, and it looks like I had like a stroke, and I have to tell my students I'm drawing on the whiteboard, and I'm this is not how I do my storyboard.
Jay is an amazing artist as well. I'm just saying, like Jay, his like Will's boards like look like illustrations because he inks like the line quality is really good. Like usually,
nice.
like even board artists, like I like because I mean, part of my job is to like build animatics, so I look at boards all day long. And drawings would be really great, but like most people like just have normal line quality. Like Will like inks.
But Will does Will do the thick to thin lines and stuff on that? Oh my god, I hate you. I hate you, Will.
Wait, so if you're on Quora, you didn't happen to know Colin Heck, did you?
Colin Heck. Was he one of the board artists?
Yeah.
I think he. Oh, did he board? I thought he was a episode director.
He might have been at the end, but.
Ian Graham was the episode director I worked with mostly, and then of course I knew Lauren and Joaquin because I trained both of them and I knew them for a very long time. So I usually just worked with Ian. He was my director for the episodes that I had done.
I just bring it up because he's like director on Ben 10 now. So.
Oh really? Oh, that's cool. No, I did not know. I'm sure he might have been on the other team. I think they had like 2 or 3 other directors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could ask him about that. I heard it was a very tough schedule on Quora, but I mean, I have all the art books and the boards are beautiful.
I know. Yeah, I have the art books, and then also I bought it all on iTunes, and if you buy it on iTunes, it comes with the animatics. So.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it was funny because actually iTunes took it off for a while, and I paid for it, and as soon as I noticed it was gone, I like emailed Apple and was like, give me back my Quora, and they were like, okay, and I was like, okay. I still have these. Because I don't have, like, the episodes are great, they're lovely to look at, but I wanted those animatics so bad, because I was like, this is great.
So what I tell, like, people who want to get into this business is look at the top people who are doing the job that you want, whether it's storyboards, concept art, or character design, or background painting. Look at their work, and then look at your own work, and ask yourself, what do you need to do to get your stuff to look like that? And if that's the kind of thinking that you have in your head, then there's no reason why you won't get a job, in animation. As long as you keep looking at the top people and trying to get better. What you don't want to do is just do the status quo of what you might be able to get in, because again, if your stuff looks like the Quora, like storyboards, then when myself or a producer or another director opens your portfolio, the first thing that they're going to ask themselves is, why are you not working on a show right now? Right. And that's what you want them. You want your portfolio to look so spectacular that the first thing they're going to do is they want to call you and be like, we want to get you over here. And that's how you want to kind of, approach trying to get into animation, is like, have a kick-ass portfolio and have kind of the go-getter attitude of like, I don't know a lot, but I'm going to try to soak in as much as I can and learn from everybody around you. Because that's how I learn. I learned from everybody that I worked with. I would look at their boards, I'd show my boards, I'd see theirs, and we try to top each other and make it kind of a more of a environment where you're growing and learning. Because that's how you're really going to learn and get better. Because, like I said, when I first started, I didn't know anything about storyboarding, and I had to just teach myself and also just study and ask questions, and that's the best thing you can do. And the thing that I've known, that I've kind of noticed, is that 95%, actually, I'll say 99% of everybody I've met in animation is really nice, and they're more than willing to kind of show you the ropes and kind of show you their tips and how to, do perspective or like design or whatever, because, we're all artists and we love to talk about our shop, and once you're in that environment, like, learn as much as you can, talk to the background guys, talk to the character designers, talk to the other board artists, and that's kind of how to get better and actually, kind of do really well in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's, humility is so important in this business, because there's always going to be somebody better than you, like, no matter who you are, unless you're like Milk Call, but then you're dead.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, if you're going in with this attitude of like, I'm the best and I can't learn anything, then you won't, because, It's like you just have to have an open mind. It's like with anything else. Like just having an open mind is so vital.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, do you guys have any? I mean, those are some really wise words that you just spoke. But do you guys have any last closing thoughts that you want to share?
Don't get into animation. No.
I have that tattooed on my arm. And
Yeah,
it's gonna work.
Yeah. Or don't get into animation storyboarding. Maybe go into like background painting. I don't know.
Oh man, so much easier.
I don't know.
Yeah, the background painter's gonna be like, "Screw you, Will."
No.
Claire's gonna attack you tomorrow, Will.
Yeah.
I know. Roger's gonna be like, "What you say about color?"
Jojo.
Hey, I'm thinking. I don't know, like, going back to just talking about clear drawings. A game that I was introduced to playing in one of my storyboard classes was, our teacher split us up into two groups, and we stood at opposite ends of the room, and we each had to draw like something like a cat running, or like someone feeling an emotion, or like a character doing an action of some sort. And we would have like, he'd time us, and for like a few seconds we had to like with a big fat Sharpie like just like bust out a drawing. And we had to like stick it on the wall, and like people on the opposite end of the wall had to guess what you drew, and you will know very fast how successful you are if they can guess if they don't even have to guess, if they can just see it. And that was a pretty fun game.
Okay, cool. I like that.
Yeah, there's all sorts of drawing games where it's like just you have to draw as fast as you can. We play a game called Telephone Pictionary, where you get a group of friends, and for you, each person has like a stack of, like, we use like index cards, and if there's 6 people, then your stack has 6 cards. If there's 7 people, you have 7 cards. So one card in your stack, and everybody has the same amount of cards. So you start with like, the rain in Spain falls me, like you write something on the card, and then pass it to the person next to you, and then you read what you're handed, and you have to draw it on the next piece of paper, and you kind of go like words, drawing, words, drawing, words, drawing. And it's kind of the telephone part of it is like the drawings illustrating the phrases and words, and it gets real convoluted. And maybe you're playing with somebody and English isn't their first language, and it gets real interesting. It's a really fun game, and it's like a great, like, it's super fun to play with friends because it's silly, but it's also like forces you to draw fast and clear and simple. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's also a fun game to play with people who can't draw, because then it's even funnier because people don't know how to like write what they're drawing.
Be good at anatomy and be clear and play games.
Wait, had you heard of that? Had either of you heard of that game before?
No, I've never heard of that before. My friends never want to play Pictionary with me, so I never get invited to whenever they play Pictionary. And I'm like, why not? It's not like, yeah, but they think I have the unfair advantage.
Well, I mean, you do, but
yeah,
still fun, right?
You should do Pictionary like with artists, but then they have to take shots in between rounds.
Well, I know if they're playing, for sure that's happening.
Well, yeah.
I've been to your guys' parties. Cool. Yeah. Alright, anything else, or is that it?
But did you want to say something, Jay?
I was gonna leave it to you. You got anything? Words of wisdom, Will?
Well, I guess kind of like what you were saying before about like doing good quality art is working on your draftsmanship will also allow you a lot more freedom in your boarding, especially if you know how to do perspective. And that means that you can just put the camera anywhere you want. And the more comfortable you are with perspective, the more freedom you have to move your camera around, to do more dramatic shots, to really be able to elicit feeling more. So I would like, drawing is such a vital component of storyboarding. I know that if you can't draw or you have limited drawing ability, you're also going to be limited in your boards as well.
Man, I don't know how to follow that up. Let me think. What's funny is that as you were saying that, I was self-reflecting in myself, thinking to myself, I need to get better at drawing. I
think that just means you're an artist.
Oh, that's actually also an important thing to cover, is if you're a good artist, like, you're probably pretty used to beating yourself up, and, it's just important to, like, not get too down on yourself, because that can lead to more problems in your life. And, it's just, like, art is great, and it's the most important thing in my life, but, like, at the end of the day, like, you're making cartoons. It's supposed to be fun,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, the worst that can happen is that, the artwork ships late, and, and the show is delivered a little bit late. It's not like you don't ship something and somebody dies, It's not like, but sometimes production people will act like, it's a life and death situation. You'll be like, hold on. Like, this isn't going to air for a couple months, so what does it really matter that we just missed the day, So sometimes it's really good to just look at perspective and just, I always tell people, like, don't kill yourself on the shows. Like, of course you gotta sometimes do all-nighters or just do whatever you need to do to get it done, but your health is always first, because, no one's gonna look out for you except for yourself. There was actually, I don't know if you remember this, Will, but there was an artist who died at Warner Brothers, I think, who was a board artist who his health was bad or something. I remember this was like years ago. I think it was back when they were still doing Quest for Camelot and
man.
And I remember, like, there's a story going around where, like, he had worked himself to death, and they went to go check on him, and he didn't go to the doctor. He kept saying, I'll do it next week, and next, like, there was no next week, and he actually died. Jeez. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, because again, these are just shows. I mean, it airs, and people watch, like they love it or they hate it, and then they watch the next episode, and the last thing you want to do is, like, I don't want my last thing that I ever worked on where it says in memoriam Jay Oliva be like, an episode of RoboCop Alpha Commando or something. Where RoboCop's got a cappuccino maker, and they're like, this was Jay's last thing that he did? Oh, it's so sad,
The moral of the story is go out on a good show.
Yeah.
I hope it wasn't working on...
I was going to say, which coincidentally enough is that I did actually work on RoboCop Alpha Commando. That was like one of the first jobs I did after I left Spider-Man in the 90s. So that's why I can't say that, because I did work on it. and I did have a scene where RoboCop had a cappuccino maker in his chest.
That sounds like really useful.
Awfully specific.
That was one of the shows where I'm like, I don't know if we should have really have done this, but okay. I mean, I was a young board artist. I was happy to just have a job, so it was cool. I worked with a lot of great guys on that show, but it was a really crazy premise. Like, it was one of those ones where, like, okay, wait a minute, there's a Saturday morning cartoon. Have you seen RoboCop? RoboCop's like a rated R, like, hardcore science fiction, and they made it, this is for kids and cappuccino makers, and oh god, it was bad.
Kids drink all those cappuccinos.
Yeah, I remember RoboCop would have, like, rollerblades pop out of his feet, because rollerblades were big at the time.
I feel like I watched this.
Yeah, and he would skate around on his rollerblades, and I thought it was the most ridiculous thing, but yeah. You probably saw it, Kaitrin, when you were like 4.
I probably did, because I have a very distinct memory of the roller skate thing.
Yeah, she's like, oh, that's cool, RoboCop's on roller skates.
Yeah, was this appealing to you, Kaitrin?
There were a lot of things that were appealing to me as a child.
And now.
Stop mocking my trash taste. I just like fun things, okay? There's nothing wrong with that.
That's true. You like the fun thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that like with animation is like bring everything that you love into it. You know, like when I do my films or the sequences that I do, I just look at the things that I grew up with that I loved, you know, growing up with Japanese anime like Akira and Ghost in the Shell and He-Man when I was a kid and the Smurfs and G.I. Joe and Transformers. The stuff that I do now, it's things that like I always wanted to see, you know, like I always wanted to see, you know, Batman do like a lot of martial arts, you know, and I put that in the stuff that I want to, that I do. And that's what you want to do is like, you know, everybody has different backgrounds and things that they love. And put it in there, you know, like, you know, if you love giant monsters, then when you do an episode with giant monsters and kaijus and stuff, then, you know, go to town and have fun with it. And that's really what animation is great because there's so many things that you can end up doing, whether it's superhero genre, cartoony stuff, funny stuff, comedy, drama, musicals. It's all there and it allows you to kind of like play in this kind of playground that anything goes. And in that ways, it's very freeing and also, you learn a lot, you know, by doing it. And like I said, you bring the things that you love. And that's really what I try to do. And I always tell people to do when they do work in this genre.
Cool.
Or medium.
I mean, like animation, you can do absolutely anything in animation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like such a powerful medium.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I think that's a really good note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me for my first podcast of hosting.
Yay!
I did the thing. I did the podcast. I did the thing. So hopefully I can do better 4 ones in the future. So find out all the info on this podcast at overlyanimated.com. Support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. And with that, we're gonna sign off. Yeah.